Okay. Um, in this video, I want to show you how extensions work in pyRevit. I apologize for not documenting these features properly on the documentation website. It just takes a lot of time, and most of my time is spent, doing my daily job, and didn't have really much time to work on documentation a lot. Um, So I'm really hoping these videos will be helpful to all of you that want to create the new extensions and your new tools and stuff like that. So initially, pyRevit was only had a single folder with a series of scripts in it, and as pyRevit would load, as Revit would load, pyRevit would find all these scripts, find the icons, and would create the tools. There was a lot of file naming patterns and stuff like that that had to be followed for this system to work. And it was really hard to add, for example, a different tab to pyRevit because it really, was designed for a different time. So last year, I sat down and redesigned the pyRevit backend and made it so much, a lot better than before. In a way that it basically works with extensions, its own extensions now. And I'll show you how it works. So under the pyRevit repo folder, there's a folder called extensions. And if we go inside it, you can see that there are three folders with the postfix extension in their name. One is pyRevit core, pyRevit development tools, and pyRevit tools. So pyRevit core, if you open Revit, pyRevit core is really this pyRevit panel that's here. That's the only thing that's inside that extension. So this first panel with all the tools, with all its associated tools and stuff like that, are created by that simple pyRevit core extension. Everything else from then on, all the other ones, all the other panels are inside the pyRevit tools extension. I'll show you how they're set up. And then there's this other thing, which is the pyRevit development extension, which is basically this one. So I told you about pyRevit core. See, there's only one tab in it, which is pyRevit, and there's only one panel in it, which is pyRevit panel. And inside it, you can see there are a bunch of buttons and a layout and stuff like that. And basically, the layout file defines how these will be shown on the panel. And then the other one, which is the pyRevit tools, also has pyRevit tab. Notice that it doesn't create a new pyRevit tab. Basically, both these two extensions will place tools and components and stuff like that inside the same pyRevit tab. So pyRevit tab again, and then this one has a lot more panels. This is the rest of the panels that's been created in the pyRevit tab. All these other panels, they're all here. And then the pyRevit development tools that we talked about, I'm sorry about this, pyRevit development tools that we talked about, creates a new tab. See, this is not pyRevit tab anymore. This is pyRevit dev. So it creates a new tab basically, and inside it you got debug, you got developer tools, you got revisions, and things like that. And if you see it says pyRevit dev here, that's the other tab that's been created by the development tools. Inside this folder, which includes all the extensions, is a JSON file, which is also called extensions. If you open it, you'll see that, don't worry about that, yeah. If you open it, you'll see that there are, so basically it's a standard JSON file. What it defines is a list of extensions that is basically inside these two brackets, right? And inside these two brackets, there are three curly brackets, which are the three extensions that are defined in that folder. This file provides the information that is necessary for pyRevit to understand what these extensions are and who created them and where is the actual Git repository for each one of them and things like that to the pyRevit extension manager tool. The pyRevit extension manager tool is under pyRevit tab, pyRevit panel, and extensions. So if I click on that, you will see that there are three extensions in here. pyRevit tools, pyRevit dev tools. pyRevit core is not listed in here because pyRevit core cannot be disabled. It's the first panel which reloads and has the extensions and about button and stuff like that in pyRevit. So that is not defined as a customizable extension basically. So these three extensions that we saw here are listed in this extension file. As I mentioned, see you've got a pyRevit tools, and you've got a pyRevit dev tools, I'm sorry, and you've got a pyRevit tools in here. This extension basically from here to here is what defines the pyRevit tools extension with all the panels. And this other one defines the pyRevit developer tools extension that activates that pyRevit dev panel. pyRevit dev tab, I'm sorry, which is different than the pyRevit tab. And then the third one is the pyRevit Plus, which has been developed by Guy Tallarico. And then this is contact information and the information, the URL for the repository for that extension, and description of that extension and other stuff. I'll go through all these fields one by one. So I told you about this extension JSON file. pyRevit itself doesn't need this extension file, extension JSON file to exist inside this folder. If it exists, you basically give pyRevit the flexibility to load or not load, or install or uninstall these extra extensions. That JSON file is the only file that's necessary for the extension tools to work. The extension tool is the one that could install or uninstall or deactivate a pyRevit extension. For example, pyRevit DevTools is deactivated by default. On my computer, it's enabled. I'm going to hit Disable Package and see pyRevit reloads, disables that package, it reloads, and once it's done, you'll notice that pyRevit Dev tab does not exist anymore. So if you want to give your users control over whether loading or not loading, or seeing the information about each one of these extensions, then you kind of have to create this extension.json. I'm sorry, not this one. My mouse is not behaving correctly today. Okay. Yes. So if you want to give your users control over whether or not load, or see the information on each one of these extensions, you kind of have to create this extension.json file and fill it with this information here. And then the extension tool in pyRevit will show it here, and then with all the information and the type of the extension and whether it's built in or not, installed or not, the status, and the latest comment on it, and yes, and you would see all that information. One of the other things that's nice about this is that, for example, if I install the pyRevit Plus from Guy, because the address to the Git repository for this extension is provided, pyRevit update tool will automatically update this extension as well whenever you're updating pyRevit. So whenever you're clicking on this update tool here, the update tool first updates all the other extensions that are defined and basically installed in pyRevit, and then it updates the pyRevit core itself. But anyway, I think that basically gives you enough information about how this extension folder is set up. What is very important, and I ask a lot of questions from other people, is that they want to create their own extensions. Obviously, that's the next step. You get all these extensions by default when you install pyRevit, but most of you want to be able to develop your own tools and create, maybe for your office or for a company, and then you want to be able to distribute it to other people and have them use it and stuff like that. I would highly suggest, well, it's not a suggestion, I would not add any folders or any changes to this pyRevit repository, because that means that next time that you're updating, that pyRevit needs to be able to resolve all these differences, the pyRevit updater, and that just creates trouble. I would highly suggest not making any changes to the pyRevit repository itself. So the way we have designed pyRevit is that you can give it other folders that pyRevit will look into for extensions. So imagine I want to create my own extension right now. I'm gonna, for the sake of this presentation, I'm just gonna go under Tools and copy a very simple command, like the script anatomy push button. I'm gonna copy this over here, just for the sake of the presentation. And I am going to create a folder here on my desktop, and I call it My Extensions. You can create this folder anywhere. It could be on a server, which is shared and mapped to this machine. It could be on the user machine. It could be on any drive, and you can place it anywhere basically. Now inside this, I'm going to go and create another folder, and let's call it my custom extension dot extension. This postfix of dot extension is how pyRevit understands that, oh, this is an extension, I need to look into it and load it. Now for this, I'm going to go inside it and I'm going to create a tab, and I'm going to call it my tab dot tab, or maybe my tools dot tab. And then inside the tab, you definitely have to create a panel. Inside an extension, you have to create a tab, because you can't just throw buttons in Revit anywhere you want, in a random place, right? You have to create a tab and then give it a panel, and then you'll be able to throw buttons in there. So tab, I'm gonna call it I don't know, basic tools panel. And inside this, I'm going to drop this tool that we copied from my own extension. I'll do another video on the how to create tools and buttons and stuff like that. But basically, it's very self-descriptive. So you can see script anatomy dot push button. So it's a push button, and when you go inside it, there's a script and there's an icon file, which it's very self-explanatory. You know that that's the script that's being run, and that's the icon that's been shown when the button is created in the UI. Anyway, we created this panel, we created this tab, we created the extension folder, and you can see how this is set up. And then we have placed that extension folder inside my extensions folder. So this parent my extensions folder can be somewhere on your servers. I think I just dropped it in that. Yeah, accidentally created this. Okay, so this my extensions folder can be anywhere on your server, and it could include all extensions that you want for your company or for office to you can place all of them basically in this. Now, the next step for this process is to go to pyRevit and settings. And under custom user extension folders, this is so important that it's always expanded by default. See, all these different categories are sort of like collapsed, but this is always expanded. So it explains in detail why this system exists, because this way, actually let me explain what this is really. Custom user extensions folders allows you to define new folders for pyRevit to look into to find extensions. So I'm going to do add folder, desktop, my extensions, and OK. See, I told pyRevit there's this other folder that you need to look into for extensions. This means that whatever happens to pyRevit repository that we talked about, whether you uninstall this or make any changes to it and stuff like that, the actual folder for your extensions and for your tools, where you have it on a server somewhere or on a separate drive, will remain intact. This is the nice thing about it. Whatever happens to, but if you update pyRevit and it crashes or something goes wrong and you have to uninstall it and reinstall it again, nothing really happens to your own extensions, because they're living in a different folder. So after you added the folder, save, and then make sure you reload pyRevit. And see, it says UI successfully parsed my custom extension. So you found your extension, it created the assembly necessary, and it created the UI necessary for that extension. So now you have the My Tools tab with the basic tools and the panel and the button that you had in the in extension, right? The information that is on the tooltip for the button are all inside the what's it called, the script itself. So the beauty of this is you can copy, as you just saw, I just copied that tool, that push button, from a completely different extension and put it in a new place, and then I have the same tool in here. So if you want to customize any of the actual built-in pyRevit tools, this is the right way to do it. Just go find the button, copy it here, and in your own extension, and then have it load, and then you can make any changes to the script you want, and it always remains your tool. It won't be affected by pyRevit updates. Just as a quick reminder, if you don't know how to, I'm going to actually open a new project so I can open that full tab. Okay, now the tab is fully visible. If you don't know, for example, if you want to customize, let's say the one of these buttons, let's say the isolate button, just hold Alt on your keyboard and then click on the tool. And what pyRevit does, it basically opens Windows Explorer with the script file, pointing to the script file for that tool. And then that's the folder. These two, the script and the icon, is inside that push button folder, isolate push button. So you can basically copy this, go back to your own extension, go under panel, so you can place it there, and then do a reload. Again, I apologize for the speed of this. I'm running everything in a virtual machine because I use my Mac for pyRevit development, and that's why it's a little bit slower than what it should be. Hopefully your computers are a lot faster than this. So my tool, see, now the tool exists here as well. This is not the same tool. It looks exactly the same, but it's a different copy. So you can go in and change the script for this and make it yours. The other concept that comes into play is that, so let's say you want to put the isolate button before the script anatomy. What happens? What can we do? Because these folders are sort of like sorted based on their names, and although you can see isolate is listed before script anatomy, it's listed here after the script anatomy. So there's this thing in Revit's API that creates all these buttons, is that you can't define the order. Isolate is sitting after script anatomy because it was created after script anatomy. If I close Revit right now and reload it, isolate will be created before script anatomy because pyRevit will basically sort everything out alphabetically. So I do want to do that. It's a little bit slow right now, but I think it's important enough that let's just do it. Oh, did I run Revit? Yeah. While Revit is loading, again, I highly encourage you to create your own extensions for the tools that you want to create or the modifications that you want to do to the pyRevit tools. This way, you will leave basically the pyRevit repository intact, and you won't hopefully run into any troubles with the update system because you haven't really changed any of the pyRevit native files. Okay, so you're back again in Revit. And I want to show you how these tools are ordered currently under your own extension. So my tools, see, isolate is before script anatomy because sorted, alphabetically. The first one gets created, and then this one, the second one gets created. So let's say you want to put this script anatomy before isolate. What can you do? if you go inside pyRevit itself, let's say we want to go inside the this panel. This is actually a good example. I'm just going to hold Alt and click on the reload. This way I'll open in Windows Explorer with that tool, so I can now backtrack to the panel itself, right? So I can see all these tools. As you can see, there are many tools in here, but you can only see 3 of them. Notice that there's a file here in here called layout. If I open that with a text editor, you can see that it says tools, and then a series of these, and then about, update, extension, script anatomy, PR links, links, and settings. This means this file basically tells pyRevit in which order create the tools. So it tells pyRevit to make the tools stack first, and then if you go here and find tools, say it says stack 2 or stack 3, this is a stack of 3 buttons. A stack, this is a stack. When 3 buttons are on top of each other, ordered in a stack, that's one stack. Like this is one stack, this is a stack, these 3 are a stack, these 3 are a stack. So that's how you define a stack. This actually should say stack 3 really, but it really doesn't matter. This is only for your information. pyRevit treats all the stacks separately. You can create 2 different types of stacks, stack 1, stack 2, and stack 3. All of this information is explained in the pyRevit blog, and then adding your own scripts. So if you go onto this page, I'm explaining extensions, the bundles, how the bundles work, like what is a command button, push button, and it goes to the these folder structures, and I basically explain what a stack 2 and a stack 3 is, and then I talked about advanced bundles, and there's this other thing called library extensions that we talked about it in a different video. So you can find all this information there, but basically the tools stack is the first set of tools that would be created, as you notice, and then there's this thing. This basically tells pyRevit to go into the slide out. Means that create every other tool inside the slide out. Don't create them in the actual UI. So you can see the about button is first. I'm actually going to lock this here so you can see. So about button first, update, extension, script anatomy, PR links. This is another stack. Links, this is another stack. So each one of them is one of these stacks, and then the settings button. Very simple. Just make sure that this name that you type here matches whatever the name of the tool that you have that's listed here. If pyRevit, one of the ways that you can basically remove a tool from your panel or tool set momentarily, if let's say there's a tool that's broken and or doesn't work anymore, and you want to keep the tool in your extension folders, but you don't want a button to be created for it in the UI. One of the ways to do it is to create this layout file and omit the name of that tool from this list. So when this file exists, pyRevit starts reading that, and this takes priority over the ordering of these tools. pyRevit already has found all these tools, and it checks this against the folders that it's found. And if, for example, the update is not listed in this, it does not create that button for it. It's a way of customizing. This layout file is a way of customizing your set of tools in pyRevit. So if you don't include any of these tools, it won't be created. So don't get confused if you listed 3 of them and expected the rest of them to be also created. You kind of have to list all the tools that you have in this, because this layout is supposed to describe the layout of the tools to pyRevit. One of the other custom lines that is for this is the dividers, basically. So if I go under the modify panel bundle, oh, I just ran the tool. Excuse me. So let's. I think I held Control instead of Alt. Okay, so I'll click yes. Modify panel, and see there's another another layout file for the modify panel. Let's open that too and see if there's a line of dashes. This means that do match, create match, draft stack, edit stack, and then create a separator. So match, the draft stack, and then the edit stack, and then there's a separator. And then you'll see that you want the 3D tools, and then toggle imported, toggle section box. So these other tools, they do not exist anymore. I've actually moved them. Yeah, because they're here. I should remove these from the pyRevit repository. They shouldn't be here. needed to be cleaned up. Anyway, so it should look like this basically. So the last tool that it creates is the 3D. And notice that I had these tools because they used to be here, listed here. And since pyRevit can't find them, it won't give you an error and it won't create those tools. These tools don't exist in the folder anymore. See, there are only the 4 main tools that belong to this panel. The toggle ones don't exist. I've moved them to the toggles panel in the new pyRevit 4.4. Anyway, so it can't find them, it won't create it. This is the separator basically if you want to create it. So for the ones that you have, let's go and create a new text file. So I'm going to close this. You could copy one of those layout files for yourself. That's one way of doing it. Actually, let's do it. And then go to your own extension, basic tools, panel. So place it inside the bundle that you want to control the layout. So basic tools panel has a layout file inside it that describes the layout for these push buttons. You can have the same thing, the same layout file inside the tab. It basically describes the order of the panels. So I think I've already have it for this pyRevit tools. Let's check that pyRevit tab. Oh, there we go. So the pyRevit core, the tools, pyRevit tools, not the core tools that create all these panels, is inside the pyRevit tools extension. So inside the pyRevit tools extension, there's a pyRevit tab folder, and inside it, see, there's a layout file that tells pyRevit to create the toggles first, section panel, analysis panel, modify panel, and then go on. So each one of these layout files describes the order of these bundles that are basically placed inside the parent bundle. This tab is a bundle. The only other bundle that it can include is a panel, and this information is listed here on the page that I told you about. So tab tells you that only panel group bundles. Example, pyRevit tab, you can only place panel contents in it because you can't throw a button somewhere on the tab. It has to sit inside a panel. Anyway, so basically these layouts control the orders of the bundles for each one of the parent bundles. We copied one of these. Let's actually do another copy, just make sure that I have it. And then go under My Tools, Basic Tools panel. Oh, we placed it here. I'm going to go edit this file, remove everything, type isolate. And then let's also create a divider, a separator, and then call script anatomy. And then save that. Oh, I think we mentioned that we want to place this one first. So let's do that, and then place that one here, and then close that. Okay, so that's it. Basically, this is all we need to do. You tell pyRevit first create this, then do a separator, and then create the isolate. Now close it, and you're good to go. Now the problem is that you can't reload from here. You can, but what's going to happen is that pyRevit's going to create a separator at the end of this, because these tools already have been created. The Revit API doesn't allow you to move tools in the UI after they're created. So what you have to do is basically to close Revit and reload it. Whenever you do layout changes, if you add a new button and it's just expected to show up at the end of the panel, that's fine. You can just do that. But whenever you're messing with the layout of the tools, you kind of have to restart your Revit. What's nice about this is that this is sort of like a user interface design feature. So it's okay to close Revit, open it again, make sure all the tools are set, and then publish your extensions to all the users. I always talk about pyRevit doesn't need to for Revit to be closed. That's fine. That's the only reason that this needs to happen is because Revit doesn't really let me to move the buttons around. Otherwise, you could have reloaded in place, and then the buttons would be ordered correctly. So anyway, let's start Revit again and see how this change has been applied. So under My Tools, see now I got Script, Anatomy, the first button, there's this separator, and then the Isolate tool. And the reason, so I don't have any documents open in this instance of Revit, but you can see the first tool is still active. You can click on it. And the reason for that is that I'm going to hold Alt and click on this tool, and we'll go to the script, and I'm going to open this script. And this is a new feature that we added in the pyRevit 4.4, that you can define the context as $0. If that's defined like this, it basically tells pyRevit that this tool can be active when no documents are open. So basically this tool doesn't do anything on any of the documents. It's just a button that opens a browser with that with the address to the URL. That's why it doesn't really need any buttons to be closed, any documents to be open. Anyway, so we just basically created one extension with one tab, one panel. You can add other tabs into this. There's no minimum requirement for this. But it's kind of nice to separate each one of the tabs in a separate extension, because visually that's what it really feels like, that each one of these tabs is sort of like a different scope of things. So you can separate those into different extensions. And then yeah, so you can add as many as panels as you want, and as many as bundles and stuff like that you want. I'll do another video on different types of bundles, more complex ones. But this is basically an extension that you have just created for yourself, and it lives here and it loads every time you open Revit, and it's good to go. Now the only thing that you have to do is to basically tell all the other users in your company to add that the extension's address to their settings. Basically, there is another way of doing this through the sysadmin in your company, that you can push the configurations for pyRevit to everyone. That would include this folder, so it would be by default loaded for everyone, and they would be able to see it here. I'll show you how that works really quickly. Okay, so yeah, everybody needs to add this, reload pyRevit, and they're good to go. Now, one last piece of information that I want to give you on the extensions is that if I go on the pyRevit right now and say go to extensions tool, you will not be able to see this extension listed there, because we did not provide, see, there are only the basic three. We did not provide any basically any what's it called, any JSON file to give this tool, the extension manager, information on that extension. So I'm going to do that really quickly right now. I'm going to go to pyRevit, repository extensions, copy this extension file that's there, go to my own extensions, this new ones that we created. Oh, sorry, you have to place it in the parent folder where all the other extensions are. Okay, and then do this, do an edit, get rid of these two that you don't need. So just make sure that you're following this standard. So see, one closing, one opening, one closing. So you define one extension in here. You can add as many extensions as you want in here if you have multiple extensions in that folder. That's fine. So built-in, make sure that's always files. This is the extensions that you have created. It's not built-in. It doesn't really affect pyRevit in any ways. It's just it shows the wrong information in there. Enable, make it true. You want your extension to be enabled by default. This is by default. So if you say false, by default, it would be disabled. Like, for example, the pyRevit developer tools. It's disabled by default because most users don't need them. Type, just put extension in here. I'll tell you about the differences between UI extensions and library extensions. Your tool name, my custom extension, make sure these two match whatever the name of that extension and whatever the name of that folder is. And then put descriptions here, my custom extension for pyRevit tutorial. Okay, and then developed by me, author URL, that's where my my profile is. The HTTP for the Git, this does not have a Git yet, so you can just, it's not a repository yet, you can leave it empty. It does not, your extension doesn't have a website. If you do, you can just put it there. If there's an internal link or whatever that you have to your company's Wikipedia or whatever page that you have, you can place it here. The image has not been used yet, but it's nice if you can include the icon. The extension tool doesn't really show the icon right now, but if you have that information, if your extension has a custom icon and stuff like that, make sure you just include it there. In the future, we'll basically add some more features to be able to use that in a nicer information panel for each one of these extensions. And then there are dependencies. I'll tell you about the dependencies later, but if one of your extensions is dependent on another extension that you have created, you should put the name of the other extension in here. So like, for example, if I had sort of like a core extension, my custom core extension, that would provide basic features to all the other extensions, you should include that in here. And that means the pyRevit makes sure that whenever this extension is being installed, it actually needs to go and install this extension as well. This only matters when your extensions are basically posted to the web as a Git repository, and pyRevit Extension Manager needs to install them. If that's not the case, and you are just creating the folders by yourself here and putting on a shared drive that everybody can read from, that this really does not matter, honestly. You can just leave that empty. The dependencies only matter for pyRevit to know whenever it's installing an extension, to make sure that it's also installing all the other important parent extensions to that. So basically, we created an extensions JSON file. Just leave it there. And then I'm going to go see, I'm not even reloading pyRevit anymore. I'm just going to go and launch the extension tool again. Okay, so now you see that your extension is also listed here. Now your users can disable the package if they don't want to. They technically could remove it, which they shouldn't. If you want to make sure that this is not removable, make sure to set the built-in to true. See if you click on these, they're not removable because they're built in. So you can do that. You can change the built-in in here. Why do you have so many of these open? Tools, extension, my extensions, extension. So yeah, so if you change that built-in to true, then the extension tool, the extension manager tool, won't show this to remove package for this. So you might end up doing that. And then installed, yes, obviously. Enabled, yes, because it's enabled. And then that's it basically. So this list the information, the name, the description, who's developed by, and then the location that's been installed under. That. So if you have created your extensions as a Git repository and it's private, so a couple of you developers at your company control the repository, make changes to it, and publish it for everyone, you should obviously include the Git address in here for the repository, and you should, if it's a private repository for your company, you can click on your extension in here, activate the Git repository as private, and put your username and password in here and set update package settings. This way, the updater tool can update it when it's updating pyRevit, because it's a private repository. When it's signing into the repository to get the most recent changes, basically, it needs the username and password to be able to log in. If you don't provide the information, the update tool won't update it, and it kind of falls back on you to make sure that the extension that you have provided in the folder to all the users is fairly updated. I don't think there's nothing else on top of my mind other than the other type of extensions that are library extensions that I will explain in a different video. But basically, this is how you add an extension to pyRevit with your own set of tools. So hopefully you'll be able to do this for your project, for your company, and then this would give you a much better way of organizing your tools in a different folder, and that are separate from pyRevit repo. They're safe. They're on your server somewhere, and you can also customize them for all your users and stuff like that, and everybody can use, and it would be helpful to you. Thank you.